G'day everyone, it's early and it's me, the anti-theocrat, here for a bright and early Saturday morning start on my next video. Yes, this is another one of those things I do. Now this one has given me a bit of a chuckle, but at the same time, how do they write this shit and get away with it? Alright, so shall we take a look at what we're talking about? Here we go. SBS, thank you SBS, one of our national broadcasters. Our supposedly multilingual one, although it seems more queer these days than multilingual. It really has the fucking trans activist narrative going on, does SBS. You ever wanted a TV station that was so interested in pushing that narrative? Anyway, hopefully the tickle in my throat will stay away long enough to get through this. Coronavirus lockdown, domestic violence complaints in Australia rise even as reports by phone fall. So reports have gone down since the lockdown. But apparently complaints have gone up, even though reports have gone down. I'd love to know how they qualify that, how they worked out that's the way of things. If nobody's reporting, then where do you get your information? Okay, here's the lovely image of a silhouetted man standing fist over the top of a woman, because we know most domestic violence is about the punching, isn't it? I mean, it's not about, abusive behaviour, which is on the list of things it's meant to be. No, it's always the man punching the woman. So here's the picture for representational purposes only, which just happens to put forward this image. It's always convenient, isn't it, that this is the image put forward. Women's rights activists and support services across Australia have registered an increase in the number of domestic violence cases during the corona lockdown. Well, they talked a big game about how it was going to be more violent during the virus crackdown, during the virus lock-in. They certainly talked that game before it had even happened. They say they've registered an increase, but the headline says that they've registered a decrease. There's been a decrease in phone services. How did they register an increase? Is just the big talk that they made before that this was going to happen. Federal and state governments have set aside extra funding to address this challenge. Yes, they have, for women and children only. Okay, new data released by the Women's Support Service and rights activists. I'm assuming this is female women's rights activists or feminists. Because when we're talking about rights activists, I doubt that the MRAs get much of a say here. So yeah, just querying which rights activists, because are they a specific group focused on a specific set of rights? Who knows? SBS isn't going to tell us. Show that due to the Corona-19 shutdown in Australia, women in abusive relationships are living with their abusers in greater proximity than before. And the nagging wife meme and the pot-throwing harpy in the household are not memes that have existed in cartoon form for longer than the internet has existed. Never did those things ever happen. So women in abusive relationships, nobody else is living with their abusers in greater proximity than before. Thank you for that very informative measure of what's going on. I guess this image must have been dead right. The exact one needed, the only one needed. So let's have a look at the highlights, shall we? Women are hesitant to report domestic violence over the phone during the coronavirus lockdown. Are they? Are they? Why? Can't they step out the backyard, out into the street for a second? I'm sure that if they really wanted to do something by phone, without someone else listening in, it wouldn't be that hard to find a place to do it. But let's assume that it is harder to make a phone call. Sorry, that was my tickly throat. In New South Wales, domestic violence-related Google searches show a 75% increase since first reported coronavirus cases. That's probably just me alone. Seriously. All the feminist services and all the suspect media did exactly the same thing. They all went on a rampage telling us how domestic violence against women was going to increase with a lockdown, and that this was a very dangerous time for women. And people like myself, we've probably increased the Google search count by 75%. Really, I mean, here I am making a video a day at the moment on a backlog of material that I've had sitting open on my computer for 2 weeks. 3 now. So, you know, I mean, and it builds up every day. This is a new one. This isn't part of the backlog I'm trying to get through. This is one that showed up yesterday. So I'm still finding the material, doing the searches. There are other people in the groups that I'm part of who are finding this material and doing these searches. Are we being abused because we've done a Google search? Now, I have an important point to make about why I question Google searches as the important factor here. Because if you Google search and you find the local domestic violence office dedicated to helping women out, up in the top corner of that website there will be a little red button that's the escape button from the website. So you could look this thing up and you could go to it and you could register your complaint, and anyone comes anywhere near you, you hit the little red button on the screen, the whole thing and history of visiting it disappears. Why is this limited to Google searches? Why are these people not saying we've had an increase to visits to our websites or reporting on our websites? This is not what's happening. They are claiming Google searches are up. Yes, I do Google searches. Federal government has earmarked an extra $150 million to support domestic violence victims, which, when they issued that money, they specifically said it was for women and children. $150 million to support women and children. Through what? These people already said they can't work through their offices face to face with people. So they're not in their offices working with people. I assume that the hostels are still able to take people, but maybe they've had to limit their staff. Which means this money's going towards people sitting behind desks waiting for the phone to ring, or running Google searches all day. So we've put $150 million into them, upping their numbers by doing Google searches and sitting behind desks with a phone that is ringing less than it used to. $150 million to do bugger all. That's nice. That's fucking nice, isn't it? Our tax money all goes to that. Our $150 million of our tax money went to them sitting behind desks no longer answering phones, but doing Google searches. The federal government has set... I'll into the article again. The federal government has set aside an extra $150 million to address this issue for women and children only, which has seen an alarming increase in recent weeks, even though there has been less phone reporting. This is in addition to the services already being provided. Because, look, I've got to go back. Seriously, if this was a real problem, would they be saying Google searches or police visits? This is meant to be something I'm meant to take seriously. This is something we're all meant to take seriously. This is what SBS puts forward as news. They can't even cite the police visiting residences more often. And then they'd just tell us it was just people visiting residences. They wouldn't say it was the men or women who were the victims. We'd all be led to assume it was just women, as this article gives us to believe. This is in addition to their services already being provided to support victims of family violence. Let's just say women and children, shall we? Stop fucking pretending that victims mean everyone. 75, they highlighted this again, 75% increase in Google searches on domestic violence. I'm telling you, the people that I associate with online are locked in, and they are very active. A recent survey conducted by Women's Safety New South Wales, well, at least we didn't go to anyone with a fucking prejudice, did we? I think I may have covered these people in an earlier video, and if I haven't, I really should, because this is just feminist safety. This is just a group's out there to beat up the narrative that women are victims, a bit like the Red Heart campaign. An advocacy group, yes. That's exactly what they are, by the way, just an advocacy group. They don't actually have any special qualifications. That works to address the domestic violence issue in New South Wales, was specifically focused on women alone and blaming men. Found that frontline services have seen a 40% increase in the number of cases since coronavirus lockdown. Have they? Women's Safety New South Wales tells me this. I say bullshit. I do. If Women's Safety New South Wales told me that I had my shoes on the wrong feet and my toes were extremely uncomfortable, I'd tell them they were full of shit and I'd walk away from them. Seriously, these people would lie for any purpose that they serve. They're just full of shit. I cannot tell you how much I hate Women's Safety New South Wales. The last month, the State Attorney General and Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence, well, that's nice. We've got a Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence against women, I guess. Mark Speakman said there's been an increase of 75% in the number of Google searches. Everywhere it comes back to Google searches. The only claim here that there was an increase somewhere else is 40%, but there's no reason or rhyme for why this number exists. They could have said police reporting, people showing up at bloody their shelters, whatever. Nothing. This is a guess, because there's nothing, no supporting evidence of this 40%. Everywhere else, absolutely everywhere else, it's Google searches. What a fucking load of shit. Could you have picked a less worthy way to measure this thing? As I said, all this had to have was the police visiting homes to show that they'd got the number from somewhere other than out their arse. And I suspect they got that number out their arse. And I look, when it comes to frontline services, I've been researching these services, and I wouldn't put it past them to fucking lie that they'd had a 40% increase. So I would want to be seeing this as the police visiting homes. That's where I want that information to come from. I don't want it to come from frontline services, because like Women's Safety New South Wales, they are lying shitbags. Okay, so the Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence says there's been an increase in Google searches related to domestic violence during the lockdown. The state government has earmarked an extra $34 million. That's excellent, on top of the $150 million nationally. Wow! To fund and support female victims of domestic violence, because I'm going to put that in there. I don't know that the New South Wales government are doing that, but I do know that the New South Wales government suck up to these mob. And if you've seen my earlier videos about New South Wales health and so forth, you know very well that male victims are not given any voice in New South Wales. The rise in new cases involving migrant women in South Australia. Yeah. Women's Support Services South Australia, data from February to March 2020 highlight an extra layer in the social trend that shows a significant increase in the number of cases reported by the state's migrant women. Well, who are you going to blame for that? Who are you going to blame for that? And let's not assume that the women aren't in some way instigating this violence, because I doubt that. Let's see. Sururana, is that an Indian name? Let's not assume that the Indian women aren't capable of domestic violence in their own homes or instigating domestic violence, because I've seen the news that comes out of India, and Indian women are fucking vicious. Alarmed by this, Sururana, an activist. This is her qualification, her listed qualification in the article. Thank you for giving her a voice. From Adelaide, who runs Shramshri, a social service that works with women and children's rights, has turned her personal mobile phone into a hotline for those seeking help. Right, but the calls are down, aren't they? Calls are down. It was the very headline. She's turned her personal mobile... The pain, the suffering she has to go through. She's turned her mobile phone into a hotline. Yes, and I'll go back to the fact that this seems to be an Indian name, Pakistani maybe, and again, I'm not putting it... I'm not going to say who the Muslim community largely represents, or what problems other countries may have had with that other nationality. Rape gangs. Migrant Women's Support Program. There's a lot of these women's support programs, isn't there? Yes, there is. I shouldn't even say these stupid things, should I? Has registered 69 new cases. 69! It's a fucking flood, isn't it? From South Australia's cultural and linguistically diverse backgrounds between February and March this year. So should we throw the bloody immigrants out? They can't get around our way of life, that we're not supposed to abuse women? Is that what they're saying? I just asking for a friend, you understand. This alarmed me because usually that number is a maximum of 30 to 35. Oh, wow. They've had a 100% increase. Excuse me if I don't believe this is fucking true. I then decided to make my personal phone number a hotline for women and children in domestic violence. Look, woman, I don't give a... You're whinging about having to make your personal phone a hotline. This is your whinge, isn't it? This is my card for how hard and serious this is. I've had to make my personal mobile phone number a hotline. Look, for some reason, I don't believe you. For some reason, I don't believe that you're having major problems around this. I just don't believe any of this shit. This sounds like a beat-up. Nobody is making their personal mobile number a hotline. They might be diverting it from the office, but nobody's doing this if there was a serious number of calls coming in. Maybe you're just not working in your office at the moment because you're in lockdown. So you've had to divert your phone. There's too much wrong with this bloody thing about this woman, but we've brought one woman up who claims to have had 69 new cases, where it used to be 30 to 35 in 2 months. This is not impressive. This story just... Many victims, she says, cannot make calls because they fear being overheard by their abusive partners or are stopped from stepping out of the house. Well, are they the ones doing the Google searches? Just out of interest, are they the ones doing the Google searches? They can get on a computer with a monitor in front of them and they can look at that and do Google searches for domestic violence. But they can't find a space to make a phone call. They can't send a text message. There's a million things they can't do, but they can do Google searches. I smell bullshit. Alarmingly, calls on my phone for help have dropped sharply. But she said cases went up. Registered 69 new cases from South Australia's cultural. Calls to my phone have gone down. I've had to make my mobile phone number a hotline. What the fuck drugs are you on, woman? What the fuck drugs? Alarmingly, calls to my phone have dropped sharply. This was about how terrible it was that you'd had to set up your phone as a hotline. Alarming, calls to my phone for help have dropped sharply. So your phone was already in service for this purpose, because you used to get them to your phone. Now, alarmingly, the calls have gone down. They've been replaced by desperate text messages and emails, which are then deleted for purposes of confidentiality. Bullshit. Absolute fucking bullshit. You're allowed to hang on to that material. You're allowed to make records of that material. You can make records of that material without adding names or details. You can keep those records. You can keep those records as long as the case is open. You do not immediately delete text messages because somebody sent you one. That is an absolute bullshit statement. Absolute fucking bullshit. I run a business. I have always held to strict practices around confidentiality because you are meant to. When you are in one of these services, which I have never been in, I could not imagine deleting this material for 3 years after receiving it. It does not mean you reference it so you can go and haunt these people or do whatever else. But these are important. If these messages are coming, as you claim, these are important. I would have them open at least until the case has been dealt with. You've gone and done whatever you're meant to be doing. You are full of shit, Miss Rana. Ms. Rana. You're full of fucking shit. Everything here said, I've had to set up my phone as a hotline because, the terrors. There's an increase in sounds. Yeah, alarmingly, phone calls have dropped. And I'm getting text messages, which I have to delete, so there's no evidence of them. Absolutely fucking full of shit. Oh, well. Referring to the data, she adds 5 out of these 65 are Indian background. Righto, so we're back to those Indian women who, I'm telling you now, the news about Indian women coming out of India, I never post it to my social media pages because I don't have a lot of myself invested in India. My life, my relationships, I'm not investing in India, but I have people through my social media who are connected to India or in India. And the laws in India that allow women to, look, the divorce laws, the separation laws, there's a whole raft of laws that seem to be in India that favour women, and they use them to kill men and their families. Dowry laws absolutely ruin families in India. And it just takes one wife to call on the dowry laws to destroy an entire family. And I hear of these things all the time. So if you think that I'm accepting that these Indian women don't take part in the relationships in their home, you've got another thing coming. Because I would, at this point, the chances of my ever wanting to form any sort of relationship, even a friendship with an Indian woman, I'd be pushed. Based on this data, we can expect an explosion. Oh, hang on, we start at the top only. People might question why only 5 new domestic violence victims from Indian women are Indian women alarm me. No, I wouldn't, because you're a lying bitch. I've seen that already. This number has recorded within, because you don't have evidence of this. Miss Rana adds that 5 out of the 69 are of Indian background. Does she know this? Is it a guess? Where does she get this number from? Where's it come from? She's had a decrease in phone calls, remember? She's got no evidence of text messages or anything because apparently she has to delete them for privacy reasons. This number has been recorded within this 2-month period, which is officially the lockdown period. These women have shown courage to report while living with their perpetrators 24/7. She explains, look, I still don't have any idea that these 5 people actually exist. Your phone service has decreased. The increase has been in Google searches, apart from some fictitious 40% number that appeared in this article. Google searches increased. You have nothing that will show to me that this actually happened. You can't... look, how hard is it to say, I got this figure because of? Based on this data, we can expect an explosion in the number of such cases once the lockdown ends. When the lockdown ends? So, we went into lockdown and things were going to get worse, and the only thing that got worse was Google searches, and a mysterious 40%, and phone calls actually got better anyway. So maybe people are actually living together better, I don't know. Maybe they're sleeping more, I don't know. Maybe they're having sex more. Maybe that's improving their relationships. I don't know what the problem is there, why you're receiving less phone calls. But anyway, yeah. I got nothing, and you've got nothing. So let's just move on, shall we? You're full of shit, Mazrana. 30% drop in phone calls, and boy, were you given some time in this article. Look at this. Come on, scroll up, you mongrel. Scroll down then. All right. This is how much she was given of this article. It is a good quarter of the article or something. Oh, this bit too. So, yeah, a good quarter of the article went to this woman claiming something that she's provided no particular evidence of and mysteriously deleted any evidence of. Okay, 30% drop in phone calls from victims in Victoria. Then can we assume a 30% drop in the number of victims in Victoria? Can we? Is that possible? I wonder, just an idea here. I wonder how many victims of domestic assault don't live with the person who's been assaulting them. How many of them have a woman who stalks them and comes around and bothers them at the house and won't leave them alone? And having met women like this, I can tell you that this thing definitely happens. But how many of these people, these women who go around and bother these guys at their homes, are now in lockdown in their houses and can't go around and bother the guy because she might get a $1,500, $1,600 fine for going out of her house just to go and bother him. Forget the fact that she'll get ignored for the domestic violence, because I'll do that. But she'll get a fine for breaching the quarantine. So she's at home not bothering him anymore. So the 30% drop in phone calls might be because we're bloody locked down in isolation. No, it's the Google searches. Over the past 2 weeks, Dr. Watson O'Connor, in Melbourne, a Melbourne-based psychiatrist and influential activist, because, you know, against domestic violence, it's where these people always are, they're always an activist, has noted a steep fall in the number of phone calls that she or other social services in Victoria usually receive from domestic violence victims. So there's a drop. A drop of 30% has been reported in number to 1-800-RESPECT. Well, who gives a fuck about 1-800-RESPECT? I'll tell you, you want a feminist service, 1-800-RESPECT has turned totally to that. I started doing research on domestic violence service providers in Australia, and I started out with the 1-800-RESPECT's recommended service, or they've got a list of services in their website, and I just started out doing that. There was like more than 2,000 services listed there, and I went through them all, and I found all the ones that mentioned men and dealt with men. And then I assessed whether or not those services were pro-male or were offering behaviour changing services, which is basically taking the idea that you could be a victim and turn it around and telling you that you're to blame. It's the old victim blaming story, but we're allowed to do that to men, we're not allowed to do it to women. And it turned out that the first time I went through, I found 3 services in 2,500, I think it was 3, in 2,500 services that were pro-male, and those services were predominantly drug and alcohol related, so services to support men who needed to dry out, or homelessness. So yeah, there was nothing at all for men who were suffering domestic violence or might have needed to escape with children who were suffering from domestic violence. Nothing at all. That's 1-800-RESPECT for you. So I don't give a fuck what you've got through 1-800-RESPECT. There is no respect from 1-800-RESPECT. As chair of the Family Violence Psychiatry, I don't care about her qualifications. She's not telling me anything except there's a 30% drop. Yesterday, I had 4 patients cancel their teleconsult who are usually keen to consult me. Probably they're at home with the perpetrator, but possibly is a really big step to take, isn't it? If you're going to claim this is because of that. Anxiety during the coronavirus lockdown is quite high amongst women. Men aren't suffering anything because of the lockdown, but women, anxiety to the buggery. And they're probably taking that anxiety out on their male partners, just for the record. But yes, apparently it's a problem for women. And there's possibly, because of 4 patients who cancelled teleconsults, who are usually keen to consult. I'm taking nothing from that, nothing at all. These 4 people apparently like to have a chat with this woman, and they decided that they didn't want to, and possibly that means something, and possibly anxiety. A possible explanation, and again we're just back to guessing, to drop the number of to the drop in the number of such calls, says Dr. Okoro, is that during the coronavirus lockdown, almost everyone is at home. And they don't call from home? People don't call from home? The neighbours are all home, and the perpetrators might be concerned that they will hear the noise or might report to the police. Well, then isn't it self-policing? But it's temporary, and sooner or later the calls will bounce back, she reasons. Well, this counteracts the entire fucking argument, doesn't it? The neighbours are all home. The perpetrators might be concerned that the police will hear them, the neighbours will hear, and the noise will be and the police will turn around. So these people are self-policing because they're locked in, and you want me to believe that there's an increase in domestic violence, yet there's a decrease in calls. There's an increase in Google searches, but not an increase in access to your websites or reporting through your websites. But this one statement counteracts everything this article is about. Absolutely fucking everything. People are at home. Self-policing. This is good, isn't it? But it's going to bounce back. Well, worry about that when the fucking virus is over. Stop trying to blame the virus for an increase. Because that's what this is about. This is the virus's increased problems. 75% of an increase in Google searches. Just see that. The horror. Yet you're saying people are self-policing. God, bloody hell. Many domestic violence refugees centres in Queensland are full. Well, we're probably full already. And now that people are locked down, they can't get out, can they? Where are they going to go? Then they're not allowed to travel around. You're stuck with them for the duration, aren't you? Some woman, Brisbane-based women's rights activist, again, they're all activists, says that in the past month, they're not service providers, these people. They're never service providers. They are all rights activists. Says that in the past month, she has observed an increase in calls. And she's got an increase in calls related to domestic violence. She's probably the only one in the country, according to this article, made to her directly or through the police and hospitals. So she's had an increase, which she's claiming is through the police and hospitals. Then wouldn't this article somewhere have mentioned the police and hospitals had seen an increase? Why do I have to get this freaking far down the article to find a mention of the police and hospitals if this was factually true? This wouldn't have even, if you'd said the police right at the top of the article, if you hadn't said 75% increase in Google searches, if you had said police and hospitals have increased their number of cases, I would have not even bothered to cover this article. I'm calling bullshit. I am calling bullshit on this woman. Because if this was true, this article would have gone straight there. It would have gone straight there just talking about this centre at the start of the article to make a point. Then it would have gone on to the 75% increase in Google searches. Had this been true, it would have been front and centre of this article. You just know this would have been the top story. And they would have followed with all this bullshit behind. In fact, this self-policing comes before this claim. So people are self-policing, but this woman wants to believe that her service is the only one that's seen an increase. 2 of them were high-risk cases with physical injuries and needed urgent accommodation. I know that all domestic violence refuge centres are full in Queensland recently. Yes, everyone's locked in. And I can accept that there might have been 2 high-risk cases. I can accept that there are still cases going on. I can accept that men are still getting ignored in this system. And that there are men locked in their houses with abusive partners who can't get any help. And wouldn't know where to go for it if they could, because services like 1-800 have no interest. And when 1-800 does accidentally show an interest, it can't offer any services. 1-800 is just a call centre. It's meant to funnel people to services, but there are no services for men. If you or someone you know is impacted by family violence or sexual assault, please do not call 1-800-RESPECT unless they are female. Or call Men's Referral Service. Do not call Men's Referral Service. Just don't. In fact, this shouldn't even have to exist. It is meant to be a part of this. The fact that they have to put Men's Referral Service after 1-800-RESPECT, which is meant to cover all victims. It is the federal government's go-to number. The fact they have to put a Men's Referral Service after tells you how little you should respect 1-800-RESPECT. Or as I usually refer to them, 1-800-NO-RESPECT. Don't go to the Men's Referral Service. Whatever you do, they will put you on to a behaviour changing program. And what that means is you are going to get victim blamed for what's happening to you in your home. It's something we can't do to women. We can't even mention short skirts anymore, but we can totally blame men for anything that happens to them. Totally. Just, I've seen the contract for one of these places, and at the top of the contract, it's stated, you have to accept that you played a part in what happened to you in your domestic situation. And immediately they can write you out of the statistics. Because if you accept that you're to blame, then the person who committed the domestic violence wasn't the woman, it was you. And you go down as a male perpetrator, not a male victim. This is foul shit. And this is a foul shit that the government just poured another $150 million into federally, and $34 million, I believe it was, in New South Wales. Yeah, the rest of that's just coronavirus. So I think you get the idea. Domestic violence is being self-policed in the home because people are worried about the neighbours hearing reporting them. So phone services have dropped. This is a good thing, isn't it? A lock-in has proven to be a good thing. As I've suggested, maybe people are just having sex a bit more, and surely that's relieving some of the tensions in their otherwise very stressed relationships. I don't know. I know that these things can help. But, yeah, there's a decrease in phone calls. People are possibly self-policing in their own homes. And yet a 75% increase in Google searches, probably by me, is proof that domestic violence is up because of coronavirus. Even though almost every one of these cited cases and what have you said services were down. 2 women were apparently admitted to services. One woman claims to have had to put her phone on as a hotline, which she then suggests she was doing anyway, and then she outright tells us that the calls to that phone have gone down. All across the board, this article does not meet the expectations of the headline. Domestic violence complaints in Australia rise, even as reports by phone fall. They did not rise. There is no evidence being suggested here that there is a rise. There is even a psychiatrist, the only person I might note who was given any qualification in this article. Everyone else was an activist running something. The one psychiatrist suggested people were self-policing because of the lockdown, because of the neighbours. Alright, I've got nothing more to add than this, than, as usual, feminists, women's activists, and service providers in the domestic violence world are full of shit. I do have another article here somewhere that I will be covering about how they've tried to shut down the current investigation into these services and what they're providing. And I suspect that articles like this are to try and head off that investigation. Because, well, if it's on the... If Google searches are on the rise, that's proof that we don't need the government looking into what we're doing with their money. Just don't. Not that it's going to matter. Nothing's going to change. Alright, I've been the Anti-Theocrat. I will see you in the next one. May gods remain fictional and all that other stuff I say on the way out. Have a good one.